Good evening and welcome to Money Matters. My name is Jim Butler with Videre Wealth Management, and my colleague tonight is Dave DeWitt of DeWitt Capital Management. Hi, David.
Tim, good seeing you again.
Good to see you. Well, we have a very interesting guest tonight, a little different than what you and I are going to start out talking about.
Good.
Not to waste any time, and for you and I to get started, we can touch on a few things that hopefully will be of general interest to our audience. Even though we don't date ourselves, we're still early in 2014.
Sure.
And a question that I hear a lot and we discuss with our clients is, so what does 2014 look like after coming off of such a good market in 2013?
Yeah.
So what do you think are some of the key issues that investors should be aware of for the remainder of the year?
Well, the thought is that interest rates have generally reached a bottom after a 30-year bull market in bonds, and the government's policy to reduce the tapering, or they're tapering the buying of the treasuries, is coming to an end. And the question is, will the economy hold up without that extra stimulus? So my concern is the government's Federal Reserve is more worried about disinflation or deflation than they are about inflation. I think they'd like to see a little more inflation, but I think there's structural unemployment. People are leaving the workforce because they're discouraged. And the pockets of strength that I see are in energy, in energy production. That's a strong point as the U.S. reaches towards energy self-sufficiency. Mm-hmm. So those are the pluses. The minuses are, I think the government's still more worried about deflation or disinflation than they are about inflation. So I think the concerns in the immediate term about an inflationary environment are probably misplaced.
So do you think that any hype about rising interest rates and get away from bonds as quickly as you can is overblown?
Yeah, if it does happen, it's probably not a bad time to buy some bonds. I mean, we have, Europe is weak. We're not really that strong. There's still problems to be solved, and we have ways to go to get through all of this. The demographics would suggest not a robust economy, because the baby boomers that spent all the money and did all the investing are now approaching retirement age, and every year into retirement, baby boomers spend less and less. So we got to wait for the echo boomers to come along to start spending more and more, and that's coming. But I think we have a period of time here of less than robust growth that we were used to in the past.
Question would be, how long is that going to last? Nobody knows the answer to that, and what I am telling clients in 2014 is to expect an economy similar to last year, but don't expect the market to behave the same.
No.
I think the market is probably going to be hopefully much more normal this year, and at the same time, at least not from what I'm hearing or reading, there's no recession lurking around the corner without any major catastrophe or crisis that would hit the fan. There's always that possibility, as we know, whether it's the Ukraine and Russia or something back in Central Europe.
Right.
But hopefully the chances are pretty slim that would actually spill over to the U.S. economy.
Yeah. No, this is an election year, right? So chances are, good chance from what I can gather, that the Senate and the House will both be Republican by the time the elections are over. And
what would that mean?
I think it would mean a little more stability, a little more, thinking that there aren't going to be any drastic changes going forward, which creates less uncertainty, which is always good for the business and the markets. So I think if the Republicans take both the House and the Senate in the fall, that would be a good thing for just people feeling more secure.
Well, you know what that might also do is have an impact, a positive impact on fiscal policy, because the perception would be that taxes would have a greater likelihood of coming down or certainly not going up. And at the very least, that could offset the impact of rising healthcare costs, because we know that's probably not going to change really anytime soon.
Yeah.
With the Affordable Health Care Act in place and still unfolding, those costs are going to continue to rise, I think, David, for at least the next 12 to 24 months.
So what sectors of the market do you think look attractive at this point?
I think you touched on one, certainly energy. And whether you go with a multinational like a Schlumberger, ExxonMobil, Chevron, I mean, those would be your big boys, safety, dividend payers, or you come more domestic to smaller companies, whether it's in the master limited partnership area that you're very familiar with, or just some local drilling companies. I think healthcare is going to have some room to run, and that can range all the way from big pharma, down to medical device companies.
Right.
There's a lot of innovation taking place, and we could very well be in for a period of new introduction, both on the drug side and medical product side.
Yeah.
So those are two areas that come to my mind.
Yeah. There's a local company in Malvern that's, I'm not recommending it, not that I don't like the company, but we don't recommend stocks on this program, but a company called Biotelemetry, which does remote heart rate monitoring. So you go to the doctor and you may have some issues. So you wear some kind of monitor that would monitor your heart rate. And so if you went into like AFib, I forget the name of it, but it's when your heart doesn't beat regularly, AFib or something.
Right.
It would notify your doctor that there was something wrong, and then they could address that issue remotely. So I think that combination of healthcare and telecommunications, wireless telecommunications, there's going to be more and more wireless devices connected remotely that are not cell phones, but monitoring things using the cellular network. Heart rate monitoring would be an example of one, but there could be all sorts of things. Monitoring your picometer, monitoring whether your dog is in the yard or in the house. There's a lot of areas like that.
Right, right.
So telecommunications, new uses of telecommunications. I think healthcare's got to be looked at as the population ages. In any case, there's going to be more need for healthcare. There
is, and in fact, let me throw this question out before we get too far into this part of the discussion, because our question, as written in by Henry Matthews of Springfield, is what are some sectors of the market that you think will be a good growth area?
Oh, okay. Well, that was a perfect lead-in. I think we already answered the question, didn't we? Didn't we say healthcare, energy, and telecommunications? Any company that is going to participate in the wider use of the internet would be a good thing. Healthcare companies that have innovative new things to help people as we age would be good. And consumer discretionary, I hear, is also good. But consumer discretionary is a very complicated term, and not everybody may know what that means.
Right, right. Are there some big names that you like of particular companies in any of those areas? One or two?
Well, Comcast.
Okay.
I mean, they're providing internet service to families and businesses, expanding bandwidth. Should create. I mean, people want more and more videos and more bandwidth in their houses. So I think that any company that's providing that, they can charge for that.
Interesting, because at the time of our conversation, they're in negotiation to close a deal with Time Warner Cable. So we'll see how that plays out. Well, thank you, David. Thank you very much.
It's a good question.
And if you have a question that you'd like to send in, please send it to Money Matters, 205 East Levering Mill Road, Ballackinwood, PA 19004. You can send it via email, moneymatterstv@gmail.com. So thank you for doing that. Our guest tonight is Peg Calvario, who is a professional coach, and she has a business that we are going to learn about, maybe something that we can benefit from, but I think is very wide-reaching in terms of the folks that you can reach both individually and maybe even corporately. Welcome, Peg.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good to have you here.
Hi, David.
So, in a nutshell, what can you tell us you do?
What do I do? Is I provide practical and applicable expert coaching to goal-driven professionals, and I help them reach their goals faster and easier than if they would do it on their own. And that's pretty much what I do.
So that's more in the individual market.
In the individual market as well as in the corporate.
Okay.
So that's on the one-to-one coaching, usually for, as I say, goal-driven professionals who are realizing that there's a gap. Probably very similar in your work. When you meet with a client, they have an aspiration, a dream, something that they're really striving for, and you realize that, okay, this is where I am today. Where would you like to be? And so that could be anywhere from leadership development to work-life balance. Maybe they're feeling as a business owner or as a busy professional, feeling that they are on an endless treadmill and can't seem to get off and manage all the urgencies that really kind of invade what's truly important in identifying priorities and significant goals for themselves.
Well, I have a question for you, and it's almost a setup question, although it's not meant to be, and that is, what do you see standing in people's way as a common obstacle in achieving their goals?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's that old saying. It's kind of what, the 6 inches up here, and it's really ourselves is what stops us in so many ways.
Okay.
You know, it's interesting because a lot of people will ask, so what makes somebody really successful? Or why is it that somebody else can achieve their goals and I just can't? And in a lot of research, especially in human behavior and motivation, it's really identifying that successful people just do things differently. And so with that, it's really about kind of just creating that shift in your thinking so that you start to take a new way of action.
So what's an example of what successful people do differently?
Well, one is, which is kind of amazing, is that, 8 out of 10 people really believe that goals are important. It's important to have, whether it's financial goals, career goals, maybe it's also in terms of educational goals or even travel goals. And yet, 8 out of 10 people, but 1 out of 5 will only write their goals down. So that one little step that, of course, when we think about goals, whether it's kind of pre-New Year's Eve or on New Year's Day, is about writing that goal down. So
How hard is it to do that?
To write the goal?
Yeah.
I think
If so few people do it, what's stopping them?
It's a one-stop. I think it's that whole essence of how the tyranny of the urgent really invades what's important. And it's just one little step. And it would be the same, obviously, I would think, that when you engage with a client and partner with them, is to get them to sit down and say, okay, so what are your financial goals? And let's write that down. How much money do you really want by the time you reach retirement? So putting and getting very specific, I think, is part of that essence of writing down your goals.
I guess if you don't know where you're going, you're going to get there, but it may not be where you want to be.
Yeah. Or you may never really know what that destination is.
Yeah.
It's kind of like New Year's, like we all make that same resolution, lose weight. Well, be specific. How much weight? Is it to lose 10 pounds?
Right.
Is it to just, drop a dress size? So be specific.
Peg, how about phase 2 of that? In other words, if you sit down with a client, write down some goals, phase 2, to me, is then how are you going to get there?
Yeah, and a little bit prior to that, Jim, is really what we would call mental contrasting. And so it's identifying the goal, what you want, okay, and then start to visualize, well, what are the obstacles that could get in the way? So, for instance, again, saying if somebody has a goal, like maybe it's a promotion, maybe they really are aspiring to get to that senior level of leadership, okay, within the organization. And yet, what would stop you? Well, all of a sudden, they might find out that, hey, there's a colleague that's interested in that same position.
Okay.
Okay? So I may be more motivated to start to look at, maybe I need to look at other activities, networking. Maybe I need to revise my resume. Maybe there's a project that I need to have that initiative that's going to help me reach that goal.
Mm.
So that's one.
Right.
Why
Yeah.
do people need coaching?
You know what? I don't believe people need coaching. It's that people desire and want coaching. So it's when an individual really, I think, recognizes and says, you know what? I've got this gap. I'm here and I want to get there. And you know what? I can exponentially get there faster if I partner with somebody who can identify blind spots, can hold me fiercely accountable, can help to give me direction, focus, give me clarity, and also really truly is a confidant and someone who can really help them propel to the next level.
So what qualifications do you bring to the table, Peg, and how does that compare within your industry?
Well, I think as we were chatting prior to the start of the show, my background, I spent over 25 years in the fitness industry. So way back when, there are enormous parallels, but always working with individuals in terms of their fitness goals, the aspirations for an individual, whether it's to run a 5K or to get them to cross the finish line of a marathon. So fitness is definitely a great metaphor to professional coaching. And 5 years ago, after I sold our family business, I really wanted to create a whole new business that was at a much deeper level with client engagement. And I think that there are so many people today that truly don't have someone that they can not necessarily talk to, but really share what's deep within inside their heart and their soul. And so that was coaching, obviously kind of aligned there. And I obviously had to look at a couple different programs and chose to, my certification came through the Coaches Training Institute, and I am credentialed through the International Coach Federation as a professional certified coach. So that's kind of what I bring.
And so when someone sits down with you, they can understand that you've been down a path,
Yeah.
and that path has allowed you to really work on the things that you're sharing with your clients. Talking about the goal setting again, what do you do when someone sets either an unrealistic goal or too big of a goal?
You know, that's a great question. You know, just writing it down isn't the magic formula. It is the how, and the how are the steps to get there. So usually is to really kind of take that big goal and start to kind of create milestones. So for instance, maybe it's an enormous goal and you'd say, well, how long do you think it's going to get? How long will it take? I remember when I set the goal in regards to selling our business, I had to step back and think, gosh, how long would it take? Average sale of a business probably takes about 3 to 5 years. So, you know, if that's true, then what would I need to do, or what are those measurables that I would want to really be kind of using as a performance indicator? So sometimes it's really getting somebody to take that big goal and then start to say, okay, what would it look like if you got halfway there and a quarter of the way there? And what would 10% be? And so getting those large goals and making small measurable steps of progress so that you know exactly where you are.
What is the single predictor of success?
What do you think it is?
I would say how badly the person wants to achieve the goal.
It's actually grit.
Grit.
Yes, it is the underlining level of perseverance, persistence, determination, despite the obstacles.
So, determination and grit.
Yeah. Commitment.
Mm-hmm.
It's all kind of...
Never giving up. I'm going to do this until it hurts, until I succeed.
Mm-hmm. That is the indicator.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I think of, though, going back to your comment about big goals, too big of goals, breaking it down absolutely makes sense. And then having the determination or grit to stay with a goal. But what if you are working with a client and you see them heading in the wrong direction?
Yeah, and sometimes I think what we need to be gentle on ourselves is that there is a time to always review our goals and revise, and then there's also a time when we need to eliminate. So to eliminate a goal sometimes can always be for the wrong reasons. Maybe the why I want to achieve that goal really is only for a very, glitter of less of significance.
Okay.
Short-termed, maybe you're going for, that goal of that fast, hard, biggest sale of my lifetime. And you find that it's very shortly lived in terms of sustainable. Or maybe you're looking at something that's really just for your own personal fortune or popularity, title. So a lot of times with clients is to really go deep in the work of why. What is the why?
The why.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you want to achieve a goal? Why is it important?
Yeah, well, I'll give you an example. A business owner, for a lot of business owners specifically, you ask them why they're in business. And of course they might say, they're passionate about whatever it is that they're doing.
Widgets.
Yeah, widgets or whatever.
The best widgets ever.
Mm-hmm. Manufacturing. But then when you really start to kind of ask them a little bit more about why, for a business owner, a business should be able to give them time, the resource of time, and money for their lifestyle. And then once you find out what their why is, their larger why could be, as I know of one of my clients, is to really solve the problem of hunger amongst the homeless in Lancaster County. So he wants to be able to have the financial resources to provide, and he also wants to be able to have the time resource so that he can serve those community meals. And so that's the reason he gets up every morning, is his why is much greater than hitting the $10 million sales number.
Right.
So, and when you find people like that, it's really, for them, their why is about creating a life of significance.
Right. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's a good example.
Mm-hmm.
So are there a couple steps that you could share with us and our listeners? Say somebody is intrigued by what we're talking about and has maybe done some goal setting and some planning, but hasn't followed through for whatever reason, are there some steps that you could outline that would be easy for them to maybe move them just a little bit further down the path?
Yeah. Well, one is, and I've shared with you online, is my infographic.
Okay. What's your infographic?
The infographic is Goals Are Everything, and it's available on my website, which is pegcalvario.com. And it really kind of gives you a quick little step. A lot of clients kind of post it in their office. And so I'd give you really kind of 4 steps. One is be specific, okay, with whatever that goal is. So even if you're looking at setting a goal for this quarter of the year, pick something and be very specific about it. Second would be to believe. Have that internal, intrinsic belief that you will succeed. And again, remember about that mental contrasting when you can identify what would those obstacles be in the way. The third would be to act, okay? Get rid of perfection, okay? And simply just act. And then fourth would be to continually review your goals. So again, when you know that it's specific, okay, you can always come back and review your progress. So they would be probably the 4 key tips.
Right.
How about habits, daily habits?
Yeah. Huge. Yeah. Huge.
Any tips on the types of daily habits that people achieve their goals have?
You know, I know somebody who decided that every day he is writing his goal down, okay? So he writes it down. He has a little spiral notebook, and he reviews that goal every day. So
does he have a new goal every day? Or
no, it's the same goal.
Same goal. He writes the same goal down every day.
He identified 3 goals.
Oh.
Okay, so one goal was in regards to, he had a sales number for his business. Another was a weight loss goal. And the third was to run the Broad Street Run in a matter of a couple weeks. So by just writing, you know, his 3 goals every day in his little spiral book, it helps to mentally prepare him for the setup of the day, so that when he doesn't feel like going to the gym and hitting the miles, he knows that in the morning he already preempted his direction for the day.
So by writing your goals down, your mind is now engaged with the goal.
Yeah.
And you're thinking about it. Whereas I guess the easier way out would just to be wake up, have your coffee, watch the news, you know, and just...
Yeah,
it's a habit.
Yeah, yeah.
Peg, let me interject if I could, because we're unfortunately out of time. And you've outlined, you know, a number of things, and I think what we finished up with can be very useful. We could continue on clearly for a lot more time. So thank you very much for your insight and your expertise. Thank you for tuning in. Keep in mind that we are now on podcast. You can find us on iTunes and YouTube as well. And you'll make sure you want to tune in next week. We have a very special guest. His name is Jack Bogle, a name that many of us are familiar with. And I can guarantee you he will make for an interesting guest and a great conversation. And until then, remember that your money matters.